I would say the realisation that I'm starting my own life now. I went away to uni and moved away from my mum's, and it just brought back so many memories of being alone, and not having my mum there was just feels like losing a leg. We relied on each other so much, and I'm starting to have to paddle my own canoe now, and I was just so panicked. Everybody else at uni seemed to know what they were doing and where they were going and what they wanted to do, and I just felt like I had no point, no purpose. When I was younger, I used to put all of me teddies in size order, make sure that they were all perfectly aligned with each other, and I used to make sure that all of me red pencils were first and then me orange ones, and so that it went in the colour of the rainbow. And I think that it was just a way of trying to make sense and order out of something that just seemed so chaotic. And I felt I couldn't talk to my mum about it, because I didn't want to make her ill, so I started developing habits to try and cope with that, which were irrational. Before I left the house, I'd have to go and check that my hair straighteners were off, not just once, several times. I have to make sure that the cooker was switched off to the point where I'm turning it on and off again, just to hear the click, and just to make sure that it was switched off, because I just couldn't cope with anything happening. The thought of something bad happening while I was out of the house was too much to bear. It would take us an hour at least to actually get out of the house. When things were just unbearable, I went to see my GP, and he told me about this place, and I was really apprehensive at first, because the thought of just talking to a stranger about really personal things didn't sit right with me, but I knew I had to do something to change this. I couldn't go on like this forever. So I just plucked up the courage and picked up the phone.
So a recent example of a case that's come through the service is a 23-year-old lady called Sarah. Sarah had gone to a GP quite distressed at the time, not really understanding what was going on, but knew that things were going wrong in her life. She felt that she wasn't functioning, she wasn't able to work anymore, and she'd previously been very proactive, well-educated young lady who actually thrived upon knowledge and academia. So that bothered her. And that's what had led her to go to a GP, that there was things changing in her life and she wasn't sure what was going on. GP then wrote to us. The GP is able to encourage the client to ring themselves, but on this occasion Sarah was quite distressed and wasn't sure how to go about that, so the GP wrote to us. So within 2 days we contacted Sarah and just invited her to give us just a little bit of information really about what was going on for her. And she was able to tell us that actually this hadn't been the start of what was going on for her. This had been going on throughout probably her years at university. So probably 6 to 7 years at this level. But we found later that there was symptoms beginning to start prior to that.
On my way here, there was so many things going through my mind. I just thought, what's it going to be like? Is it just going to be me sitting in front of some stranger, them making notes and being cold and removed, and I would just have to pour everything out? And that just changed as soon as I walked in. Just greeted with big smiles and looks of recognition and just friendliness, and the atmosphere was so calming and safe. She got me to look at my own behaviour with a critical eye and think about why I was doing those things and how it was making me feel, and whether these were rational things to be doing.
So Sarah talked about some of these behaviours she would use regularly as a child, making sure teddies were lined up, making sure things were just in the right place. And what we started to do was just try and understand the meaning behind that. Why did they have to be like that? What did it do for her? And quite quickly we realised that there was some quite significant beliefs that Sarah had about what that meant and what it would prevent and how it would help. And she started to very slowly tell me that a dad had left around that time in the family home, and at that point I used supervision quite regularly to talk about the impact this was having on the client, because obviously she was quite distressed. It was something she didn't really want to disclose, but after doing so we very quickly realised that there was a very specific belief around it was my fault.
Becky helped me realise that I shouldn't feel guilty for my dad leaving. It wasn't my fault, and by actually opening up and talking to my mum about it, she's reaffirmed for me that it wasn't my fault.
Quite quickly we discovered with Sarah that it was extremely important to have a little look back at traits that maybe had developed over some time. Sarah actually found that quite interesting to do herself, because past was something she hadn't actually linked with the current and the beliefs that she currently has and uses in life. And when we did a few sessions just looking at a timeline, looking at a bit of a family history, understanding how she's functioned up until now, and we found quite a lot of traits that actually she's had in place as coping strategies from quite a young age actually. She was able to tell me that her mum's given her some understanding of how she coped as a child. She would worry she talked about worrying quite a lot, quite often, looking out and listening out for things that might be upsetting. She would talk about turning the television off when Casualty came on. And as a result, when she's felt her anxiety rising from childhood, what she talked about was often having to then reassure herself with some sort of behaviour. And she talked about things like, if the day was a difficult day, it felt better to make sure her teddies were all rearranged on the bed in the right way. She talked about making sure she was, the milk bottle was in the fridge at the right angle. All of these behaviours up until now, she hadn't really related to those being times where she was excessively worried. But by using that information, she can now see that the behaviours she might now use, which have become more excessive, more time-consuming, actually began with anxiety and increase her anxiety.
I'm coming to the end of my time here now. And I just feel so much better than I did at the start. I still have little moments where I start to go back into old behaviour, but they're manageable moments now. I can step back and I can look at why I'm behaving like this, and I can think back to the sessions that I've had with Becky, and that's all they are, moments. I can get through them. It's hard work, but it's a process. I know the more energy I keep putting in, the better it's going to become, and the more time there's going to be between those moments. My friend rang me the other day. She had a half day from work because the computers had crashed or something, and she said, like, look, I'm going to be in town in half an hour, do you want to come? We can go shopping. We've been looking at these trousers and that on the internet, and I just did it. I went, I grabbed me keys, me phone, me purse, and just left the house without a second's thought. Just went for it. And 6 months ago I wouldn't have done that. I would have come up with every excuse under the sun not to go. But I was just spontaneous and went, and I had such a great day. Wasn't planned, but it was one of the best days I've had in a long time.